Hello, everybody, and happy Wednesday. Welcome to Big Blue Kickoff Live, presented by Cadillac, the official luxury vehicle of the Giants. John Schmelk, Paul Dottino, and Matthew Sytak, live with you from the Hackensack Meridian Health Podcast Studio. Keep getting better. We just got off Joe Schoen's live press conference, which we streamed on the YouTube channel and Giants.com and the Giants app. We are streaming on all those platforms as well. And we are going to take your calls again at 201-939-4513. So get in. We're going to take a lot of your calls today, folks, because Joe did not say a ton, I think, that we have to analyze here, because there were just a ton of quarterback questions, and I guess that's where we're going to start. First, Matt, where understandably so, the team needs a quarterback, and I'll try to sum this up as best as I can. He would love the team to be able to draft a young guy they think can develop into a franchise quarterback, but he doesn't feel, I would say, unheard of urgency to do so because of what they did in free agency. They're not going to force it if the value doesn't make the pick. But I think it's fair to say, given what Joe said and what we've seen in terms of how many quarterbacks that they've visited, worked out, all that sort of stuff, that a quarterback is certainly in the plans, but it's not a necessity no matter what situation.
Yeah, I think the exact quote Joe said was, it isn't mandatory. After signing Russell Wilson, Jameis Winston, he mentioned that he likes having Tommy in the room as well, that Tommy has won games for this team, still developing. The thing that stood out to me the most about all the quarterback talk, other than, hearing about the same question asked about 15 different ways, would be that Joe mentioned that it's not only just about potentially finding, your franchise quarterback, but, you could take a quarterback in round 3, 4, day 3, and that guy can develop into your backup quarterback. And then all of a sudden you have a cost-controlled backup quarterback for 4 years under contract, when that's a position where the guys are making, Joe mentioned between, $4 to $10 million a year. And that's money that you can now spend on the rest of the roster. So while obviously all the buzz and hype is about the quarterbacks that could be in play, at pick 3 or in the first round, but Joe mentioned it's not just about evaluating the top guys. It's about evaluating the entire quarterback class and seeing if they could find potentially the backup quarterback of the future. It might not be quite as, sexy of a headline as finding your franchise quarterback, which Joe even mentioned himself, but it is still a very important position. So they could find a backup quarterback for the next 4 years, making, a rookie deal. They'd be very happy with that.
Here's the only problem with that. They have Winston locked up for the next 2 years on that type of contract. So you won't be getting the financial benefit this year and next. True. Because Jameis is under contract. So that might be something down the road that you would think about maybe a little bit more.
Yeah, I could understand what you're saying, John. I mean, I think ultimately, if they do take a guy, no matter what round it is, that puts Tommy DeVito in serious jeopardy because he'd be number 4. So, in that regard, you're looking at a guy who could potentially be, if let's just say, for argument's sake, and I hate these hypotheticals, but I think it's important because what Matt just brought up, if you draft a guy who could potentially be a legitimate backup, there's the opportunity that he could wind up coming in here, learning how to be a backup, being cheap and cost-controlled. He's the 3 this year, and then maybe next year he becomes the 2.
Right.
That's always possible.
Yeah,
maybe Winston
definitely
falls by the wayside, and Winston doesn't last because the young kid becomes the 2.
That's possible. I don't know what the guarantees look like on that contract.
I don't think it was a ton.
Yes.
We're talking about probably a bruise on the cap. So,
I think that would be a position that Joe, the whole front office, everyone would be, happily take with open arms. If they draft a young guy and he comes in and shows this can be at the very least, the quarterback 2 of the future, and who knows, maybe even down the road push to try to become that starter. That would be a situation. You can never have enough quarterbacks on your team, as we've come to learn. So if that were to happen, I think that is a situation that this entire building would, be very, very happy about, because obviously these are reported numbers, and we do not know any of the exact contract numbers with Russell Wilson and Jameis Winston, but some of the reported numbers have shown that these deals might have been, structured in ways where, not saying this is likely or even realistic, but could eventually, even down the road this season, they could maybe, flip one of them. If it looks like they draft a rookie that's going to come in and be able to handle the backup quarterback position, or if Tommy, is the backup and the rookie's the number 3, there is a world where maybe Russ or Jameis, maybe they get flipped at the end of training camp or before the trade deadline, and then you have those 3 quarterbacks under contract.
That's also a good point.
Not saying it's likely or realistic, but it is a possibility that could happen.
No, fair point. Absolutely fair point. Paul, and then he also spoke about, I think it was the second question that got asked was about the quarterback workouts that were reportedly scheduled coming up here with Shedeur. And then Joe mentioned it's not just quarterbacks, it's other players as well at other positions. And it really was just a scheduling deal for why they were late in the process. It was nothing more complicated than that.
Yeah, he made it very, very clear that because of the 30-30 visits, because of the scheduling with the scouts, getting all their stuff together, and he made also very clear this too, John. He said these players don't like to do these workouts before the pro days.
Yep. Which makes sense.
Right. And so when you consider all of those conflicts that were clogging up the schedule, he said this was the week to do it. And you're right. He also made it very clear, and this was funny because I think everybody in the room was like, oh, he said, we got private workouts scheduled with non-quarterbacks too. I think that just surprised a whole bunch of folks that were sitting there.
And to note, by the way, this is the last day for 30 visits for all teams. You get those 30 visits to your facility from draft prospects every year. This is the last day for that, which again opens up the schedule. The scouts also just left from their meetings, from setting the board. So that frees us some time here over the next 4 or 5 days to get some of these workouts in. And then they come back next week. You start taking calls on potential trades, and you have the draft on Thursday. Matt, anything else from this press conference that really kind of grabbed your attention that you think it's worth talking about?
2 things, just because these are, I guess, the most buzzworthy players with the Giants' first pick. One, very quick, Joe said that he's meeting with Ronnie Barnes and the medical staff tomorrow to have the meeting about Abdul Carter's medicals. I'm assuming it's not just about Abdul, it's about any players that might have injury concerns. Joe talks every year about how they have that, the meeting with the whole medical staff to go over anyone that might have any sort of injury concern. But he did say that, based on, he did also mention that Abdul was in for a visit last week. And he said, based on everything they've seen, both in person and from reports, there's no reason or pause for concern right now about Abdul Carter's medicals. Obviously, he won't know for sure until he meets with Ronnie Barnes tomorrow. Yeah. So that was one. And then the second thing was just what he was saying about Travis Hunter.
Very cagey. And you can tell he hesitated to think about exactly how he wanted to word it, which I thought was interesting.
Yeah, because, obviously we've all seen the reports or the article that came out, I think it was yesterday, with Travis Hunter saying he wants to play both sides of the ball, like adamantly saying it. And Joe basically said, we see him being able to handle that. We think he could. Obviously, the one aspect that Joe said I would need to see that Travis would be able to prove he could do is handle the mental aspect, because learning, the Giants or any NFL offense, in addition to the weekly defensive game plan, is just a big toll mentally on anyone.
And he did not say full-time both ways either. He just said
he did not.
Both
he
ways.
just said he thinks he could play both ways because he kept on using the word unique, which is obviously, that's not a unique term to describe Travis Hunter. We've heard it a lot the last few months, but he kept saying, unique individual, unique athlete, and he made it clear we would not be afraid to play him on both sides of the ball. Again, he didn't say full time, but he did say that they would not hesitate to do that.
Yeah, I think that was certainly, to me, a very well thought out answer, because the one thing that he does not want to do, if Travis Hunter were to land here, is to give Travis Hunter any preconceived notions about any restrictions that they might have on him.
You also don't want to box the organization in either in terms of how you're going to use him, right?
No doubt. So I thought that was absolutely a very well planned out answer by Joe when he took a pause to come up with that one. And as you had said, John, I think you were the first one to bring it up on our show, where you questioned the issue of the meeting time more so than the physicality, because Joe made very clear, he actually said, do not doubt the player, because he thinks his physical tools are that good that he could do it.
He did talk about, though, lasting a whole season going both ways, though, too. That was something he did bring up.
Yes, he was somewhat questionable about the long-term durability. But I thought the other item that applies to both Carter and Hunter is he was asked about blue chip. And I believe the term, which you don't like to use, the question, I believe, was generational, blue chip kind of player. And Joe's quote was, you don't pass on that type of player. He made that extremely clear. I think from his comments about the Carters and the Hunters of the world, I think he does view those guys in that ilk. And I can't say that for sure.
Well, he did say he feels good about the players that'll be available.
Yes, he did.
He said that.
So if you want to kind of connect those fuzzy dots, that might tell you a little bit about the way he's thinking about those two guys if one of them should wind up being on the board.
Well, they're really good players, so that would not surprise me. I was surprised that he actually gave as clear of an answer as he did on the injury thing, where he basically said, yeah, I'm not going to have much of a pause for concern here, which I'm sure assuages some of your fears, Paul, that you have about the foot.
I would really love to have talked to him after he sat down with Ronnie Barnes.
Well, my guess is that he has to talk to Ronnie about the medical recheck. I'm sure he already talked to Ronnie about the initial combine diagnosis. Sure. So I'm sure already has a pretty good feel for it. It's just a matter of what the combine recheck has to say. All right, those are Matt's two things. Paul, anything else from the presser that you want to touch on?
Yeah, you know what? He reiterated about Evan Neal being excited to be able to do whatever he can do to help the team.
And no decision, by the way, on the Neal and Thibodeau 5-year options yet.
Correct. And then the final thing, he said that would come after the draft.
Yep.
The options. Then the final thing, he did come out and did cite edge rusher, defensive line, running back, and cornerback as what he thought were the deepest positions in the draft.
Surprised by corner there, to be honest with you.
I was a tad too, but I think, John, and we've made this comment on the show before, there are a lot of make-it players at the position,
right.
Guys who will be backups. They may not necessarily be starters in the league, but there are a lot of guys who can play corner in this league who will get on 53s. I don't know how many starters there are. I think we both know that it's kind of thin up top at the corner spot, but there are guys who are going to make it.
Yeah,
absolutely.
The way that Joe kind of phrased it, he said, like, the D-line and the edge groups are really deep. He said the running back is another really deep group. And then when it comes to cornerback, he said there's a lot of depth. The way he phrased it made it seem exactly what you just said, Paul, that, like, those other three have guys that are going to go early and, like, could potentially become, elite players in the NFL and pretty early on. Cornerback, maybe not as many of those top-tier guys, but there will be guys, as Paul mentioned, that, go on day 3 that were going to make teams and contribute to NFL teams.
201-939-4513. All right, folks, we got 45 minutes. Let's do some calls here and lead off with Donnie in Queens. Donnie, you're on Big Blue Kickoff Live. What's up, pal?
Hey, guys. Been a while. Really appreciate the coverage you guys have given us leading up here to the draft.
Thank you.
And, John, I know you were waiting for this, but Brugler's mock came out, and the when and where was he did Milroe at 34 to the Giants. For me, personally, there's only one thing the Giants could do at number 3 that would make me upset, and that would be Travis Hunter. And while I respect the talent and the level of play he brings, one thing I don't like about the last 2 off seasons for the Giants is Neighbors, Nubin, Phillips, even now Holland and Adebo.
Not a lot of trench work there, right, Donnie?
It's finesse players. And to add another one there, like the Giants are not going to catch up to Philly by trying to outgun them at wideout and in the secondary.
I get that. It's a fair point.
You got to be able to push back at some point. So, look, I personally would take Sanders at 3. It doesn't seem like that's going to happen. Who knows? But for me, it's you take Carter, and you finally look at the team and say there's something that we can hang our hat on. We have strength. We've got depth at the pass rusher position. God forbid, like last year when Kayvon went down, Aziz played okay, but very one-dimensional player. So to me, it's get Carter, and to me at that point, I'm passing on quarterback for the rest of the draft if I'm not taking one that I don't truly believe in. I'm not just taking the dart throw. You could do that in any draft. To me, it's if you're taking Carter, you're looking offensive line or preferably defensive tackle at the top of that second round and really draft into the strengths of the draft, which is, for the Giants, they have a chance to get one of the blue-chip guys, and then to take the depth at the defensive tackle position at the top of the round, second round, you really have a strength that you can look into. Last thing, and then I'll hang up and listen, was really disappointing in the Holland signing. Thought it just made absolutely no sense. The way they've handled the safety position, one of the few things they inherited from Gettleman was Love and McKinney. To let those guys both walk out the door just to use a second-round pick and then a high free agent signing on a guy from outside the building kind of made absolutely no sense to me. But here we are, looking forward to the draft, and I'll try to check in with you guys either right before or right after the first round, and appreciate the time. Thanks.
Thank you, Donnie. Appreciate
Thanks,
the call. Just to say very quickly about the safety position, they wanted Julian Love here. They offered him more money than he got from Seattle, and he decided to wait on that, go elsewhere. I think the Giants ended up re-signing Darius Slayton, and the cap would not allow them to bring Julian Love back. So they wanted Julian Love back. That was not a decision that the Giants said, well, we don't want him, we're going to let him go. Number one. And then number two, on McKinney, you mentioned bringing somebody from outside the organization. Well, remember, guys, too, when you know a lot about a player that's in the building, that's good and bad, right? When you make that decision. And again, I'm not sure what the evaluation was on Xavier and what they thought about the thing. I'm not trying to impugn that, but Brian Daboll clearly had a lot of experience, even though he didn't coach him with Holland from the draft process and knowing the player. He was very excited about him when we talked to him about it at the owners' meeting. And remember, when you have a guy in the building, you're going to know the most about him. And the fact that they decided to move on from him and go with somebody else probably can inform you what their decision-making process was like. And Holland also made less money than Xavier McKinney did, if you look at percentage of the cap and that sort of stuff. So you put all those two things together, and that's how I would view the safety position in terms of what the Giants did there. And I think also you have to keep in mind that when I'm trying to think, and he was already gone at that point. You have a better feel for Shane Bowen now and what he needs at the safety position. I think safeties are probably a little more important to Bowen than they are to Wink in terms of how he runs his defense, in terms of using the disguise with the safeties and the zones and stuff like that.
I think that's fair.
I wonder if that has something to do with it too.
I think the other thing that we all have to keep in mind, folks, when you're dealing with free agents, whether it's your own guys or somebody who's coming in from outside the building, is that the player has to want to be here because it's a two-way street. And Xavier McKinney made it clear to all the media the final weeks of the season before he left, he wanted to get paid. He was looking for a mega contract.
Oh, and you can't blame him. You're coming off your rookie contract.
I'm not blaming him.
And by the way, Xavier's a great dude. He was great to us, and none of us had any.
He was fine with us.
None of us have any bad experience with Xavier.
But
He's a good dude.
He was making it publicly clear that he was going for a big money deal, and quite frankly, the number that he got at that time from Green Bay was more than any other team was willing to give him.
Yeah, I mean, there was a report since the conclusion of this past season, so a year after he left, that the Giants did want to bring him back. It's just that they didn't think that, they didn't want to pay him record-setting numbers at the safety position, which he either got or came close to. So there reportedly was an interest in bringing him back, but as John mentioned, Javon Holland got less money, and in a year where the salary cap is $30 million higher than Xavier McKinney got last year. So obviously McKinney had an amazing season with Green Bay, but again, it's all putting the pieces of a puzzle together. And clearly the front office didn't think that they wanted to give McKinney in the safety position that, record-setting, position-setting contract. And they addressed it with a player who is still very good a year later for less money.
Yeah, and I think you also had a little bit more wiggle room with the cap this year.
Yeah, definitely.
The way you can structure your contracts.
Sure.
They had so much cap room coming up in the 2026 offseason. You feel more comfortable taking that really small first-year cap hit, right? And then putting more money into next year's cap since, Joe Schoen's saying you have over $100 million on cap space next year. So a lot of the contracts, they were able to put a lot of that money into the following year's cap with the way you structure it. 2 years ago, you would have been putting money into this year's cap if you structured it that way, and they wouldn't have had nearly as much wiggle room. So I think they were probably able, with the amount of cap space they had and the growing cap, were able to be a little bit more aggressive in how they structured the contracts and how they spent this year as opposed to where they were last year.
Now, the caller's gone, but I think we would all agree the Giants gave up too many big plays last season.
Yeah.
Okay? The secondary did not do enough to contain other teams' offenses. So what did Joe Schoen do? He went out and spent big money on one of the premier safeties on the market and one of the premier corners on the market.
Now, in fairness to Donnie the caller, you might say that, well, if you didn't leave that Xavier McKinney go, maybe you would have left
and that's
fewer
fair.
Big plays last year.
But once that truck is already past the exit on the turnpike, you now have to figure out, well, how are we going to deal with what we have? And he had a secondary that was giving up too many big plays, and he had a chance to invest in two guys who he believes can help turn that around and make plays and maybe help the turnover ratio. So he decided, you know what, we're gonna go get guys who are gonna make plays. If he just sat there and did nothing, or maybe only signed a Debo, and the other 3/4 of the secondary were the same, how happy would you be then?
Yeah, Donnie, we understand your point, though. Obviously, you let one young safety go for big money, then you sign a different young safety for big money. I understand why you would wonder why you would handle it that way.
I see that.
No, I get it.
Circumstances changed.
And again, I don't think if Julian Love was still here and he decided to sign with the Giants when they offered him the contract a couple years ago, maybe you don't draft Tyler Newman then in the second round.
That'd have been a different story.
I think then you're having a different conversation.
Correct.
All right, let's go to Lou in New Jersey. He's up next on Big Blue Kickoff Live. What's up, Lou?
Hey, how you guys doing?
We're good.
Good.
So I actually want to talk not about pick 3, but about pick 34.
Great. I think
really
that's a lot
go...
more. I think that's a lot more interesting, Louie. I appreciate that. What do you got?
Thank you.
Yeah, I really think we're going to go Carter at 3. After everything I've heard, I think it makes the most sense. I don't think what's his name? I don't think Sanders is worth the pick.
The guy has been legitimately compared to Von Miller. If a Giant fan can't get excited about that, I don't know what you can get excited about.
Yeah, I know, right? But back to pick 34, I really think either we're going to stay there or we're going to trade up for either Dart. I know Dart's been talked about a lot. I really think we are eyeing someone like him or Milroe. What do you guys think? Do you guys think we're going to trade up, or you think we should just stay put?
I think there are enough quarterbacks, Lou, where you're not going to have to trade up into the first round. And I don't like the idea of trading up into the first round because then I think you're using your second and probably one of your third-round picks to do that, and that's a lot of draft capital. I would feel more comfortable trading back up into the second round, where maybe that's only going to cost you your 4 to do something like that rather than your 3. So that's how I would approach that myself. And I think something to watch here, guys, and look, maybe the Giant fans pick Shedeur Sanders, maybe they don't. If they don't select him, keep an eye on the Saints at number 9. Hope that they do not pick the quarterback there, because the more Shedeur would then get pushed. And by the way, there's no guarantee he's the second quarterback taken either. That's been something that Daniel Jeremiah has talked about this week.
Right.
Field Yates has talked about that this week, and they have really good contacts in the league. So just take that with a grain of salt. The further he gets pushed back, the further the rest of the quarterbacks get pushed back, which means it's less likely that you're going to have to move up to get one of these guys. And I think the 3 guys, and I'll throw Tyler Shook into that mix too. It's Shook, it's Milroe, it's Dart. That's the next group of guys you're keeping an eye on. And I'm happy to stick and pick at 34. I feel good that a player is going to drop to you that's going to be good. I don't want to use that extra capital to move up into pick 22, 23.
Yeah, I mean, look, the only way I think it would make sense to move up into the end of the first round to get one of those 3 quarterbacks that you just mentioned, John, would be only if you have one of those guys significantly higher than the other 2. I think, obviously, we do not have access to the Giants draft board, but I have a feeling that the 3 of them will be generally closely ranked.
I mean,
how close? we don't know, but
Shedeur, if Shedeur drops. So I think that's what you're saying. If Shedeur starts to drop into
Shedeur is
the
another
20s,
story.
right.
If Shedeur gets past the Saints at 9, the next most likely landing spot would be Pittsburgh at 21. Now, the Cleveland Browns, who have picked 33, also need a quarterback. And they have also been rumored to potentially, if Shedeur starts falling, they could trade up. So that is something else to keep in mind. Or
could a team like the Saints, or could a team like the Jets, all teams that could use
100%.
future franchise quarterbacks.
I wouldn't put it past Jacksonville at some point either to look at a quarterback. I have information. Go ahead.
Yeah, they can't get off that contract for 3 years.
They just signed Trevor Lawrence to a
understand.
monster deal.
I understand. Just keep that in the back of your mind.
All right.
Birdies sing sometimes, fellas. Birdies sing sometimes.
It depends what type of bird you're talking about. Was it a dodo bird?
I was surprised myself, but I've heard Jacksonville has been making some noise about grabbing a backup quarterback.
Well, yeah, but Shedeur Sanders isn't a backup quarterback.
No,
you're not
no,
trading
no,
back
no,
into
no,
the
no.
first round to draft a backup
I didn't
quarterback.
say. I misunderstood what you said.
That's the conversation
I thought you were talking about other teams who may be looking to get a quarterback.
We were talking about teams that would trade back into the first round for a quarterback.
Let me pull that back.
Okay.
Jacksonville would be looking at the second tier.
See, now we found this right bird to talk to, and we got the right tune.
No, I think Jacksonville could be looking to get one in the second or third round.
That wouldn't shock me.
That's what I've been told.
Sure, that's okay.
And the other thing that Joe mentioned, which maybe not necessarily in play this year, because as John mentioned, the Giants do have the extra compensatory pick at 99, an extra third-round pick. But Joe mentioned, he didn't seem too thrilled with the idea of doing a trade to move up that sacrifices future draft capital.
Yeah.
We're talking 2026 draft. He did not.
Hey, guys, can I make a point about that real quick?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yep.
Yeah, no, the thing is, though, I know we don't want – the thing is with trading up, we're in such a point where we have to – we can't give up the future. There's no point, especially with this draft. Last year we took, Malik Neighbors at 6. We took, Newman in the second, and we did all BPA, and look how much that improved. We now have a slot corner. Our safety room looks decent with Newman, and then Neighbors is going to be a superstar by the end of this year. Now that we have Wilson over, Daniel Jones throwing the ball. So, you're going to see those numbers go up. But just, being able to stay put, I think, would be the right move, even though that fifth year option is, it's tempting in the first to move up. Even, going up to pick 27 with the Ravens, shout out my friend Dominic. I know he's a Ravens fan. Moving up there wouldn't be a bad thing to do. If we really wanted Dart, I know we had, like you said, the comp pick at 99. So what? You would give up 34 and 99 to move up?
Caller, let me put it to you this way.
Your guy of the future.
I'm a food guy, right? So you got 105. You got 105 choices. 5 in the first 105, which takes you right to the top of the fourth round. You've got so many steaks on the grill. Take as many bites of that pure prime filet mignon as you can before they start throwing hamburgers on it. Okay? So use those picks and get some prime rib. Get some prime filet mignon. Don't be trading those picks off. No, I think they should just stay with what they've got. And the meat of this draft, where the best stuff is, the juiciest stuff, second and third round, just go to town, man. Take the best player on the board.
100%. I 100% agree with you with that. But also the saying is, if you want your guy, you get your guy. And if your guy's there at the end of the first and you have the chance to get that fifth-year option, why not go for it?
No, look, and Lou, appreciate the call. I think the fifth-year option thing is interesting. Historically, aside from Lamar Jackson, that trade up into the back of the first round routine has not worked well for teams.
No, right, really.
Yeah, and the fifth-year option can also, I'm not going to say it's an obstacle. It's always good to have the option than rather not have it. But it's not always the easiest decision either, whether or not to pick in the fifth-year option. Look what happened with Daniel Jones. Look what happened with Sam Darnold. You get to some very difficult decisions if the guy isn't where you want him to be at after year 4. And it can force you into some tricky decisions. So
after year 3.
Correct. Yeah, right. After year 3.
Going into year 4.
Yes, going into year 4. Right. So, yes, it would be great, but I tend to agree with the caller and with you guys. I'm not a big fan of trading up in this draft if you don't have to, because I think the value of this draft is picks 50 to 100, and I think you can have a lot of good players in that mix.
And on that note, if you don't trade up into the first round and you stick at 34, when the first round ends and everyone flips the page to day 2, all of a sudden, Joe Schoen's phone is going to be blowing up with calls from teams, GMs looking to move up to the very top of the first to the second round, because where the Cleveland Browns are taking at 33, the Giants at 34, those are like the prime real estate for day 2. There will be guys that some teams are like, I cannot believe that player X dropped to the second round. We need to go up and get this guy. And the Giants will then have an opportunity. If they're still at 34, they can move down a little bit in the second round, still address the trenches, offensive line or defensive line, and pick up more of that draft capital in the meat of this draft, mid to late day 2. They can pick up more picks like that, still get a guy that can contribute potentially right away, if not develop into a starter. So that is just another thing to consider when you in this debate of whether or not to trade up to the end of the first round to get a quarterback. Because if they stay at 34, I'm not saying Joe will, but he will at least have the opportunity to move back and stockpile more picks, maybe even a pick in next year's draft, which we've been talking about. If you don't get your quarterback this year, you probably are looking towards next year to try to address that. Having as much draft capital as possible in next year's draft, that can only help you.
Yeah, look, and that's something we didn't talk about much, Matt, when we did our mock draft on Monday, the potential of getting to 34 and saying, let's move back a little bit. Like if there's 4 quarterbacks left, right? Or 3 quarterbacks left on the board, can you move back a couple of spots? Pick up extra draft capital for later and then pick the quarterback at 38 or 39 or something like that. So I think that actually is interesting.
I saw one option. Mock draft that came out in the last week that I forgot whose it was, but it had the Giants moving from 34, I believe, to 38. Still landing Tyler Booker, who could have been the pick at 34. No one would blink twice about it.
That's Chad Ryder, I think. Maybe
either him or Field Yates.
What was the price for the 4 spots?
And I think I believe they got a third-round pick for it.
No,
early fourth-round pick.
Wow, that's still pretty good value
for 4 spots
to move back from 34 to 38. I believe they got a fourth-round.
You can get a 4 for that.
Get that team on the phone.
Get that team on the phone.
Exactly. There will. I don't know if the trade package would be quite that rich, but there will be opportunities going into day 2 with that 34th pick to make a deal to move back and get more draft picks.
Yeah, if we have time at the end, Paul has not seen the mock draft we did on Monday. I'm curious
Right.
to see what his take on it if we have some time at the end of the show here. All right, let's go to Jersey Joe, who ironically is in Florida. Jersey Joe, what's up?
Jersey Mo.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mo. What's up, Jersey Mo?
Hey, what's going on, man? First time, long time fan, man. I love the show, man.
Cool.
Beautiful.
Appreciate
you guys do an awesome job. I've been a Giants fan since '86, man, and I live in Florida now, and we got a strong Giants fan base in Florida by Jacksonville, and I'm gonna tell you, we loving that everybody is fooling everybody. I think we're gonna draft Shador Sanders. We never had a black quarterback. He's talented, man. He's going to sell tickets on the business side and all that.
Mo, what I would say is take all that side stuff out. Is he going to win you a lot of football games?
That'll sell tickets even better.
That's what matters. I don't care about any of the other stuff. What I want, Mo, is a guy that can come in here, be your quarterback, and consistently win you football games and be very productive in the passing game. That's what I'm looking for.
He brings that leadership, man. You got to mold them. You got to, you know what I'm saying? I mean, you got to crawl before you walk, baby. So, you know what I'm saying? That's why we got Wilson, we got Winston, and, you know, a year on the bench learning from these guys. I don't think Dabo or Joe Schoen is going anywhere, man. All this hype, these guys on the hot seat, I don't think they're going nowhere, man.
So Mo, real quick.
Doing,
Mo, you would feel comfortable using the 3rd overall pick on a player and having him sit an entire year?
Why not? Let him learn. Eli did it for half a season, and then he, and he took over. So why not? I mean, we did it before.
Yeah, that was half a season, though. It wasn't a full season for one.
Yeah.
But, yeah, no, look, Mo, if you believe
it's
Shador...
just my opinion. I'm not the owner.
No, Mo, and here's
I'm
the
a
thing.
fan. You know
No, Mo, and that's great. No, if the Giants get to this and they agree with you that Shador's the guy and he's the guy to lead this team for 10, 15 years, they should absolutely pick him. 1,000% correct. I'm not going to argue with you on that. And you believe in the player. If the Giants believe in the player, they're going to pick him because they understand the importance of a quarterback. So,
Thank you. Thank you very much, and I hang up and I listen.
Thank you, Mo. Always appreciate first-timers calling in. Thank you for listening and watching
Mo.
the show. We appreciate it, man. And look, that's the thing. Look, if you think that the guy there at 3 at that position is the guy, you pick the guy, bottom line.
Yeah, look, Joe talked about the quarterback evaluation process earlier, and he said, you know, we have this process in place. They've used it for close to a decade now because he mentioned that they used this process on Andy Dalton, who obviously went into the draft quite a long time ago. But if they put Shador through this, you know, whole evaluation process, Daves puts him through the ringer like we saw on that episode of Hard Knocks last year, like if they go through all of that and they think Shador is our guy, then you have to take him at number 3, and you are going to feel good about it because I trust this process. I mean, obviously the trying to trade up didn't work out last year, but it's no secret that the Giants wanted to move up for Jaden Daniels or Drake May, and I think both the Commanders and Patriots are pretty happy with those picks after year 1. So I am confident that whatever process they put these quarterbacks through, if they come out and say, this is our guy, then I feel good about that guy being the future quarterback here.
And you never know when you're going to be picking this high again. That's always the truth.
You hope
right?
it's not for a very long time.
You just don't know. All right, let's go back to the phones, 201-939-4513. We got people from all over the country, Taylor. We got Mo in Florida, now we're going to go to Austin out in California. Austin, what's up, pal?
Hey, how's it going, guys?
What's up, Austin?
Good.
So my first question is, if at pick 3, let's say the Browns take Shadir, because that is also a possibility that I don't think is being talked about as much.
Sure.
If you have Abdul and you have Travis Hunter on the board, who are you guys picking and why?
Austin,
Yes.
Great question. This is a debate we've had here many times and hang out because I think we all have slightly varying opinions on it. I honestly go back and forth and I change my mind, not daily, but I think in some ways both players are safer, which I think is what's interesting to me. I can make the argument that Abdul Carter has shown that he is a really good pass rusher. You know what he's going to give you in that situation.
Right.
And you feel good about him being a high-end pass rusher. But he's not the biggest guy. He's had injuries. You worry about him against the run a little bit consistently, down in, down out.
Right.
Then you go to Hunter, right? He's a phenomenal athlete, a phenomenal person as a human. And you get shots at him at 2 different positions. Can he work at corner? No. Then put him at wideout. Does he work at wideout? No. All right, then put him at corner. So that makes him a safe pick in his own right. In terms of overall upside, Austin, and this is where I think why I land on Abdul Carter, I don't believe that Travis Hunter will ever become a guy that's going to play more than half the snaps on both sides of the ball. I think he's going to be
too small. He can't. I personally don't think he'll be able to do it.
Correct.
But he could prove us wrong. I just think with his size, and I think going from college to NFL is just a whole different ballgame. You're playing with grown men now. So
Austin, 100% agree with you. And look, and he's a smaller player. And when I look at this in the void, and I love Travis Hunter. If the Giants pick him at 3, I'd be thrilled. Have you ever heard of a team picking a wide receiver at 3rd overall that's not a great route runner and is 180 pounds?
No.
Have you ever heard of a team picking a cornerback at number 3 that hasn't shown he can consistently play press man at the pro level?
Probably, right?
Not play press? Usually the guys picked that high are press man guys. So now maybe Jeffrey Okudah would be an exception. He didn't play a ton of press man at Ohio State.
To be a bust.
Right, but a lot of that's because of injuries. I don't think that's because of his play in a lot of ways.
I get you.
So I do think, Austin, there are some things with Hunter where he's undeveloped at both spots because he played both spots. You know what I mean? He hasn't had a chance to focus in on one position and be great at one thing, which I do think, by the way, once he focuses in the NFL, whichever one he ends up being the primary spot, he will become great at that spot, which is why I have no problem picking him here. But that's why I think, assuming Carter's healthy and the medicals are completely clean, I think I would, in the end up picking Abdul Carter. And Paul, I know you think differently.
Yeah, I'm a Hunter guy, and I just think that the upside that you could get too many big plays and impact plays on either side of the ball wherever he goes is just too much of a value for me. And again, it's like a millimeter difference. I mean, I would jump for joy and get triple cheese on my pizza if they get Abdul Carter.
Where would you go, man?
Yeah, for me, if the Browns take Shador, I am happy no matter what.
Oh, me too.
I would be thrilled with either of these guys, and I think both of them will come in year one and contribute in a big way and help turn this franchise around. I lean slightly more towards Abdul Carter. Going back 4 years ago to 2021, and Dan Salomon upstairs is my witness, I was pounding the table saying we need to take Micah Parsons. We did not. We missed out on that. I don't know if Abdul Carter will necessarily develop into a type of player like Micah Parsons is, because Micah Parsons is obviously one of the best players in the league. But he certainly has the potential to get there. And in his press conference, Joe mentioned, he's like, did you guys watch the Super Bowl? Did you see what Philly was able to do, rushing 4 guys the enther game?
The hell with the Super Bowl. Have you watched the Eagles play the Giants twice a year for the past 8 years?
Yeah, so
not been good.
So while you look at the Giants' current roster and edge rusher, cornerback, wide receiver, those 3 are probably not at the top of the list of priorities for this team. But when you can add a blue chip guy, you do it. And for me, being able to turn the Giants' pass rush, which before Dexter Lawrence got hurt last year, was probably the best in the league. They were leading the league in sacks for a good portion of the season prior to Dexter's injury. If you could add Abdul Carter to the mix of those guys that are already there, you're now forming an elite pass rush, perhaps one of the top pass rushes in the NFL. Everyone always says the Giants don't have an identity. There's your identity right there. They're going to come after the quarterback, smack you in the mouth every single week. You can't double one guy because you're going to leave another guy with single blocking. I feel like you can't go wrong with
And
that
Austin,
rule.
I'll just say this too. I do think in general, harder to find an elite pass rusher than it is to find a corner or a wide receiver.
That is true.
So,
yeah.
Yes, it is. And I think, too, with our division now in Jaden Daniels, I think it's more valuable to get a guy like Abdul Carter when you have to worry about Jalen Hurts, and even Dak Prescott still has rushing ability. And then also now we have to worry about Jaden Daniels. And also, too, I think giving up on Deontay Banks so soon is kind of a mistake because I think he showed a lot of upside. Not saying Kayvon hasn't, but Kayvon has injury history for 2 seasons. And then also with Aziz coming in, I mean, there was arguments that Aziz was just as good as Kayvon, so from his producing.
Well, look,
appreciate the call, Austin. Thank you. Excellent call.
I don't want to get on your case there, but Adebo's coming off a broken leg, and he's one of the starting corners this year. So if you want to throw Thibodeau's fractured wrist Well, the Debo's got a broken leg, and he's a starting corner, and the other guy's a starting outside edge guy. So that's kind of a wash. I can't use that as a reason to draft one guy or the other.
Well,
I can't.
Look, and this, yeah, me neither. This was the conversation we had a couple weeks ago, and I said my kind of hot take at the time was that even though I see Hunter as more of a corner, that I think if he gets to the Giants, he's going to play more receiver in his first year than corner. And Paul kind of agreed with me. And I think Joe Schoen, which is why he answered so carefully the way he did today, he mentioned that they feel pretty good about their top 3 corners and their top 3 wide receivers. So
yeah,
where they use him, I think, will be largely, frankly, left up to the coaching staff. And how they slide him in and out, I think it's easier to slide a guy in and out at wide receiver than it is at corner,
no
and
doubt.
rotating guys at cornerback.
No doubt.
So, and I think he can play slot. I think he can play outside as a wide receiver. I don't see him as a slot corner necessarily.
I don't either.
No.
So that's why I think since there's more places to use him at wide out, that's where I think you'll have an easier time sliding him in and out there.
Well, again, John, when we had our Penn State guest on, he indicated that you could just use him back there as a rover in the secondary. You don't have to just put him on the boundary.
Colorado.
Oh,
You said-
Colorado.
he's a
Yes,
Penn
I'm
State,
sorry. I'm sorry.
Yeah, because I don't want him in the slot having to like set the
No.
edge against the run.
No.
Like, can you imagine Travis Hunter sitting there
Absolutely
and
not.
some guard coming around on a pole? Like, get him out of there.
But see,
no.
you could put him in a dime, okay? You can put him in a dime where now he's got the opportunity, depending upon what your coverage you're playing on that play, he could be just roaming around as a zone and picking his spot in terms of where he's going to take it, or he could pick his spot as to who he's going to double. And if you're an offensive coordinator, how do you know what he's going to do?
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. If you're the DC, you can make him a
Remember,
very valuable and variable piece.
I will.
You have to hyper-specific his role, though, because otherwise it's going to be too much for him to
Well,
handle.
again,
Sorry,
that's
Matt.
why I would only make him a dime then.
Right.
If
No,
I'm
but-
going to do that.
No, but you can't say go do whatever you want. You
Oh,
need
no,
to
no.
hyper-specific that role
He's
for
got to
him.
have an A or a B option, and that's it.
No, I don't even think it's A or B. I think it's an A. This is your
Potentially.
option. Here's your A. Go ahead, man. I'm sorry.
No, it's all. I was also going to say just that Abdul Carter showed he's got some versatility too. Obviously, he had
Absolutely.
he had tremendous success as an edge rusher this past season, but he had 2 great seasons as an off-ball linebacker.
There's no
prior.
wrong pick here, fellas. You can't go wrong with either one of those guys.
Yeah.
It's an automatic win.
And I've seen so many people on Twitter mention like, "Oh, well, what are you going to do with Kayvon if you take Abdul Carter?" Joe said this today. You cannot ever have enough pass rushers. You will find ways to get all of the guys on the field. Let's not forget those 2 Super Bowl teams that beat the Patriots. Does everyone forget the NASCAR package that worked pretty successfully?
Kiwanuka was their 4th guy that year.
Exactly.
And they screwed him up, though, when they moved him to linebacker.
Well, that's
He knows
that's
it.
another
We all
discussion.
know it. The coaching staff knows it.
That's another
Talk to
discussion.
Matthias. When they moved him out of that edge rushing spot and out of the defensive line and they made him a linebacker, they basically really put the cap on his career.
But he was the 4th guy, not the 3rd. That's the difference.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
In both the 07 and 11 Super Bowl teams, they had 3 and an 11 4 pass rushers that were able to successfully get after the quarterback. So getting ways to find Abdul Carter on the field, that is not even the slightest concern to me. They will find a way to
Yes,
use
they
him
will.
and utilize him well.
Yes, they will.
100%. All right, let's go up to Canada as we continue our cross-continent tour and say what's up to Tyler. Tyler, what's happening, man?
Hey guys, how you doing? I'm a first-time caller here. How you guys doing?
We're doing great, man. What do you got for us today?
I just wanted to say I feel like they're missing a lot of talent on this team, and no doubt Shador Sanders would be my pick. But Abdul Carter and Travis Hunter would make a difference. But where is this team going with Russell Wilson and Jameis Winston like at the helm at 37 years old? Like how many wins could this guy get us?
Well, Tyler, appreciate the call, man. Your connection's a little wonky there. Appreciate you calling in. You can listen off the air. I think because they believe that, frankly, Russell Wilson will give you a better chance to win this year than any rookie quarterback in the class that they have a chance that they're going to have a chance to draft. Now, maybe I'm wrong, and they think Shador's the guy. They pick him at 3, and he starts week 1. That's possible. Remember, when they made the decision on Russell Wilson, there still was now a chance now that Shador Sanders might not even be available when they pick a number 3. So you have to prepare as though you're not going to be able to get the guy you want in the draft. And look, we had Bill Polian on last Monday on the show, and he talked about how no rookie quarterback's ready to start the minute he walks in the door.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they wanted to make sure that they had somebody that they could put in there, be competent, be a good starter, and do what Brian Dable wants him to do, and be ready to go. week one. And that's why I think they brought in those older guys to do it. Whether or not they believe in Shedeur at 3, we'll have to wait and find out. They've certainly been cagey about that. And I think that's why they brought those guys in, just so you don't have to depend on a rookie in year one to win games. Because, frankly, there's not a lot of Jaden Daniels out there. Most rookies in year one, Matt, do not win a lot of football games.
No, definitely not. I mean, we've all spoken about how in an ideal world you take a rookie quarterback and let him sit at least for like half a season before you throw him out there. It's not too often that you throw a guy in week one and he has a lot of success. We have seen it a couple of times in recent years, which I think is why everyone is so gung-ho about taking that rookie and throwing him right into the fire right away. But as we've seen, there are more cases of guys sitting at least for a little bit and developing into that franchise quarterback than getting thrown into the fire right away week one.
And let me put an addendum on that, because we have seen it a little bit, to your point, Matt. You're right. But I think the guys we've seen it with have been the guys that are crazy mobile. So what they do...
CJ Stroud.
Stroud would be the exception. Stroud would be the exception. That's correct. But you look at Lamar, who had a really good first year.
Of course.
You look at Jaden Daniels, who had a really good first year. You look at Robert Griffin III, who had a really good first year. Joe Burrow had a good first year, too, but he was, one of the best, frankly, quarterback prospects we've ever seen.
Would you put Bo Nix in that category? I mean, his season wasn't great, but...
Bo Nix did run for over 500 yards this year.
He did.
But he's not to the level of the other guys in terms of mobility. And he also had a lot of good infrastructure around him. I think the mobile quarterback can help mitigate some of the issues of learning the NFL pass game.
Yeah.
Do you know why? You don't have to get from 1 to 2 to 3. You have to get to 1 to 2.
And then run.
And then if you're Jaden Daniels, you can just take off and
30
run
yards.
for 30 yards. That's why I think it's going to be tougher for a pocket passer like Shedeur to be really good in year one, because he doesn't have that superior athleticism like a Griffin III, like a Jaden Daniels, like a Lamar Jackson, to fall back on as a crutch as you learn the NFL passing game, which takes every rookie quarterback in the NFL a long time to figure out.
I don't think there's any doubt about that, John. And the other thing, quite honestly, too, and this is just a schematic thing, and this has nothing to do with him as much as it does Colorado's offense. We talked about how Pat Shurmur looked incredibly different as an OC with Colorado this year.
It was a college offense.
No question. And much, much shorter stuff. A lot of short stuff. Partly because of the line, but there could have been other factors as well. The truth is, he gets to the NFL now, he's going to have to be in more of a wide, you would want him to be more of a wide open scheme. Now, if he goes to somebody who's got more of a West Coast offense, where he can be a pocket passer, they can protect him, and they're going to do a lot of shorts and dinks and dunks and that kind of stuff. Okay, like what the Jets did when Chad Pennington was here. Pennington was not mobile. Pennington did not have a good arm. He did not have the long ball. But it was a lot of short dinks and dunks, and that's how they got to win a whole bunch of games and go to the playoffs. If he goes to an offense that is like what Pennington ran with the Jets, he's got a better chance to succeed earlier. But to me, you got to fit the right glove there. He's not going to be every flavor for every team.
All right. Yeah, go ahead, Matt.
And the only other thing I want to bring up that the caller mentioned is how many games is Russell Wilson going to lead this team to victory? Well, going back to last year, granted, he was on a very talented Steelers team with a elite defense, but Russell Wilson went 6-5 and put up pretty solid numbers in one of the most run-heavy offenses in the entire NFL. It's not like Russell Wilson, is coming off some like awful season in which he did not produce at all. Obviously, the numbers kind of slowed down a little bit towards the very tail end of the season.
Because the teams they played were really, really good.
The teams they played were really good. And I've seen reports recently that said that there was a little bit of friction inside the Pittsburgh building towards the end of the season because Arthur Smith wanted to just continue run the ball, and obviously Russell Wilson as a quarterback wanted to sometimes throw it, and Arthur Smith wasn't allowing him to do that too often.
By the way, fellas, he's only 37. Too many times I think people call up
36 or 37.
Going on 37. I think 37 opening day,
turning
right?
37 in November.
Is it November? Okay. So he'll be 37 during the season. My point is, my goodness, like George Foreman used to say when he was heavyweight champ of the world, it's not a death sentence, for God's sakes. We're talking about him sometimes as if he's 57.
No, I know, but I think
he's
the reason people bring that up is because he's not going to be the same guy he was when he was 28.
And there's no question about that.
I think that's the only reason people
But at
bring that up.
37, it's entirely possible he might have at least 3 years left.
Yeah.
It's not impossible.
The very last game that we saw Russell Wilson with the Steelers was that playoff game against the Ravens, which obviously the Ravens won by 2 touchdowns, but Russell Wilson completed almost 70% of his passes for 270 yards and 2 touchdowns. He looked good that game. He was not the reason that they lost that game. So Russell Wilson still has some good football in him. Now, does he have a decade left of good football in him? No, because he's 36 years old, and that's just not physically possible. But he is still very capable of winning this team some games this year.
And one thing we all know, his whole career, and a leopard doesn't change his spots usually, he's not going to turn the ball over.
And
he's going to give you a chance to win.
And he stays healthy. He
That's
does not
durable.
generally
He's
miss
durable.
a lot of games, except for the calf to start last year.
I mean,
He has played in a lot of games.
so
All right, we got time for a couple more calls here, 2019. In fact, we'll do one more, and then I want to show Paul that mock that we did on Monday real quick. Let's go to Trey in Philly. Trey, you're up next on Big Blue Kickoff Live. What's up, pal?
Hey, how y'all doing, man?
We're
Thanks for taking my call. Been a long time since I called in. I admire all the draft work you guys cover. It's been truly informative to me.
Thank you.
It helps me, helps me scout these guys that's possible draft picks for the Giants. I just had a question for you guys that I just was sitting here thinking about. I was like, well, what if the Giants, because they do need a quarterback, no matter which round they get them, I would like to see them get a young quarterback in the building. So I was thinking, well, what if they draft Shedeur Sanders? But how would you guys feel if they traded next year's first for the 4th round and draft Abdul Carter? And I'll take my question off the air. Thank you, guys.
Well, I don't think you need to give up a lot more than that. Wait, what was this question?
I think, because I've seen this,
Wait, I'm
I saw
confused
this
now.
idea floated on Twitter this week. I think this is what he's referring to. You take Shedeur at 3, and then similar to what the Texans did a couple of years ago for Will Anderson, use the 34th pick next year's first and whatever other draft capital to move all the way up to 4.
Yeah, I don't think the
and
Patriots
take
are doing that.
Abdul Carter at 4 then.
Gotcha.
not going to happen.
I don't think so either, but I did see that trade idea floated on Twitter somewhere this
Didn't
week.
the Texans have a second first-round pick
I
that
believe
year
they
anyway?
traded up from 12.
Right, which is a lot different than trading up from 34.
100%.
Yeah.
Is going to cost more than just 34 in next year's first to go up 30 picks up to 4.
Yeah, you're looking at, that might be 2 ones.
Not only that, but you also have to keep in mind, you have now 2 top 4 draft picks and the salaries of top 4 draft picks now on the salary cap for this year.
Yeah.
Obviously, as you go later into the first round, those salaries decrease. So now you're having 2 of the most expensive rookies possible on your roster this year.
Look, I love the idea of getting premium players, but this team is not deep enough where you can sacrifice the number of picks you would have to sacrifice to make that type
Absolutely.
of
No, the
not.
only way that sort of happens is you take Carter at 3, and as we mentioned before, Shedeur starts dropping to like maybe the middle of the first round, and then trading up from 34 isn't going to be quite as costly as trading up from 34 to 4.
Yeah, and I'm being consistent, by the way. I did not like that Will Anderson trade for the Texans. I know he's been a good player, but I think last year, have we not seen the other holes on that roster that maybe could have been filled with the picks that they could have used on players if they didn't trade up for Will Anderson, like the offensive line?
It looked great after year
doubt.
1 when you had
No
the
doubt.
offensive and defensive rookies of the year, but then year 2 when CJ Stroud takes a little bit of a step back because, as you mentioned, the offensive line was sort of lacking talent, and they could have addressed that with those draft picks.
Exactly why the instant evaluations need to be put on the shelf. You got to, like we always say about rookies, you got to wait at least 3 years. Well, you know what? Even when you make a trade, you got to wait 3 years. Let the thing play out. See how the circumstances wind up, and then long term.
I mean, you talk about paying guys. They pay Will Anderson big time money. They had to trade Laramie Tunsil.
Yeah, they did.
Yeah.
They have no cap space.
They had
starting
offer.
tackle.
So that's why, in theory, having the 3rd and 4th pick sounds great. There's some cost to that as well, in addition to just draft picks.
Correct. All right, so Paul, here's how the mock draft went. I'm going to rattle off players. I apologize for the speed of this. If you guys want to go check it out, this was our show from Monday this week, correct? So go check that out if you want to hear the mock draft in its entirety and all of our thinking and reasoning. And I'm curious what you would do with these picks, Paul.
Okay.
Very easy. Cam Ward first, Travis Hunter 2nd. We went Abdul Carter 3rd to the Giants. I'm sure you're on board with that in that situation.
Sure,
Okay.
sure.
So I'm going to go through this quickly.
Yeah.
Patriots, Will Campbell. Jaguars, Mason Graham. Raiders, Ashton Genty. Jets, Armand Membo. Panthers, Ted McMillan. Saints, Shedeur Sanders. Bears, Matthew Golden. Niners, Michael Williams. Cowboys, Jade Barron. Is that correct?
Jade.
No.
Okay, that would be the first one that would puzzle me.
Is that who Lance gave them? Or you gave him?
No, I gave him.
You, yeah, Jahdae Barron.
Up to
Okay,
that
got it.
point, I can make sense out of every pick.
Yeah, because you want one of the two wide receivers. You ended up going corner instead with
Yeah,
ABD.
that would be one to make me pause.
Malachi Starks, 13 to the Dolphins. Tyler Warren, 14 to the Colts. Shamar Stewart, 15 to the Falcons.
Okay.
Jalen Walker, 18 to the Cardinals. Nick Emenwari, 17 to the Bengals. 18th, Seahawks, Kelvin Banks. 19th, Bucks, Jahad Campbell. 20th, Broncos, Omarion Hampton. 21st, Steelers, Derek Harmon. 22nd, Chargers, Emeka Egbuka. 23rd, Packers, Kenneth Grant. 24th, Vikings, Will Johnson. 25th, Texans, aforementioned offensive line, Josh Simmons. 26, Los Angeles Rams, Colston Loveland. 27, Ravens, Gray Zabel. 28, Lions, Tyler Booker. 29, Commanders, Mike Green. 30, Bills, Maxwell Hairston. 31, Chiefs, Walter Nolan. 32, Eagles, Donovan Ezeraku. 33, Browns, Jackson Dart. So that leaves the Giants at 34.
Yep.
The names that we considered in this spot, I'm going to try to remember the ones I didn't write down. You can help me with this too, SciTech. The two offensive linemen we had were Donovan Jackson and Josh Connerly.
Absolutely.
At defensive line,
I think Tyleek Williams.
You had to have Williams in there.
Tyleek Williams was in the conversation. That's correct. I don't think there were any defensive tackles left that we were having a conversation about at this point. James Pierce is someone Lance had in the conversation.
You had Nolan taken already?
Nolan went
31.
to 31 to the Chiefs.
Okay.
So James Pierce was somebody that was in the conversation here.
We brought up the quarterbacks.
We brought up the quarterbacks, obviously, because both Milroe and Shook are on the board. And that's, I think,
I
the
brought up
major guys.
one other name.
The receiver? Was it
Luther
a receiver?
Burden.
Luther Burden. That's right. That's a good one.
Receiver.
That's a good one, too.
My biggest issue down there at the bottom would have been Green. You like him that high?
Mike Green?
29?
I
thought that was low.
I think he might go in the top 15. I know he's had off the field stuff, but he is really talented.
The off the field stuff, I got a feeling is going to scare a lot of teams
It
away.
could. I never know how teams are going to react to that, Paul.
I know.
So
I know.
I think tape wise, I think he might be the second or third best edge rusher in the class.
He's absolutely got tools. There's no question about that. But unfortunately, I think we've all seen some guys who
he's
had
been
some of these off the field things that have really stung.
In the guys that usually have informed mock drafts that you can trust, he's been a first round pick in all of them.
Yeah, so maybe they know what that personnel file says.
Yeah.
All right, I'll buy that.
Is
but
there anyone?
That one gave me pause though, only because I think there's red flags on him.
Is there any? And by the way, he went to the Commanders, so that's a guy that you can worry about sacking Giants quarterbacks for the next 5
Thanks,
years.
John.
No problem. That was me. I made that pick, and I was hoping Lance would let Walter Nolan fall to the Eagles for me, so I could make everyone upset again.
Oh,
Because that was just what would happen with the Philadelphia Eagles. But Lance decided to pick him to the Chiefs.
but
so he got messed me
neighborhoods
up there.
everywhere, every guy that you named in the neighborhood that he was at, it seemed like that was a appropriate neighborhood.
It's realistic.
Yeah, I wasn't like oh okay. I didn't like Barron though.
Now
I told you that one.
I
didn't
will
like him
say
there.
that I think for the most part, this draft's going to be unpredictable. But I do think you probably have 20 guys to 25 you feel good are not going to be there when the Giants pick. And I don't think Josh Connolly is going to get down to 34.
I doubt it.
He's a guy that I think could start at left tackle.
Mm-hmm.
Those guys generally don't last till the second round.
No, they do
But
not.
given this situation, Paul, what would you have done? Would you have done Connolly? Would you have done Donovan Jackson? Would you have went elsewhere? What would be your thought process with the situation?
As much as I have been promoting Tyleek Williams for that spot, and I certainly think that if Donovan Jackson falls there, I would really think long and hard.
Jackson over Tyleek, huh?
I would think long and hard about that one because of I think the defensive tackle spot is just so strong that I'm going to still be able to get a guy who's going to give me snaps immediately in the third round. I believe that that's going to happen. I think there are so many good DTs. Jackson should not get to them.
Paul, if I walk out with Jamari Caldwell at the top of round 4, I'd be okay with it. As a run stuffer?
That's what I mean.
Right.
I just don't think the quality between Jackson and the offensive lineman in round 3 is going to be much deeper than or much further than the quality of the DTs that you're going to see in the
Darius
third round.
Alexander was still on the board as well. If that
I
interests
do
you.
think in that 65th pick, you could potentially get an interior offensive lineman who'd be pretty good, who could develop into someone pretty good. I mean, we mentioned on the Make the Case or Mock Draft Tracker video yesterday, Tate Ratledge from Georgia in the third round, someone like that. I mean, it'd be hard to argue against like that. I don't think the difference between him and Donovan Jackson is so drastically different.
I like the Luther Burden argument there because I think he's probably the next guy in that group that you would like. I think that's...
Yeah, I mean, look, I don't think giving the quarterback room another playmaker, and then it also gives you some insurance. Joe mentioned when you have guys whose contracts are coming up next year, it doesn't hurt to pick someone that maybe this year is a backup, but could potentially take over as the starter next year with Wan'Dale Robinson going into a contract.
I think
year.
part of the attraction of me about Jackson is I think Jackson is a lower first round guy. I don't think he belongs in the second round.
So you would go
I chose Jackson.
You chose Jackson too
for 34. That would be my pick.
I
for
took
sure.
Connerly. Both Lance and Matt took Jackson.
Yeah.
So you would have Connerly, Jackson, Tyleek.
Yes,
in that situation,
probably because the two O linemen are just they're for real.
And I know better than to ask you about quarterback.
Yeah. Don't even ask me about a quarterback.
I do want to defend my Barron pick.
Yes, please.
Real quick. I was going to go with Tet McMillan or Matthew Golden because obviously wide receiver is a big need for the Cowboys, and Lance sniped him. I think the pick before me or
And
two
picks, and I will say this
for Golden.
And I'm going to be honest, that was a bad pick. The Bears are not picking a wide receiver at 10th overall this year.
I don't.
There is a minuscule
I do
chance.
think Golden will be there for the Cowboys. And again, as you said when I mentioned Barron as the pick, they like picking local guys. Texas wide receiver this past season. I do think that's who they would pick. But cornerback is also a need. And in Barron, obviously they have Trayvon Diggs and Deron Bland, but those guys are coming off major injuries.
And they just lost Jordan Lewis.
They lost Jordan Lewis. He could line up as the slot cornerback this year and potentially move outside next year if one of those guys moves, and another local guy.
Yeah, the Bears are taking Genty if he's there, or they're picking a pass rusher. I think that's what.
But you could easily put Will Johnson to that Cowboys pick instead of Barron. It's just as I mentioned, it's about the flavor that you like.
Apparently, Dallas does like Will Johnson.
And
I would not.
And you know me.
High,
I'm a big guy.
I
always go for the bigger.
I wouldn't be shocked.
So if I'm going to take a corner there, if I'm Dallas, I'm going Johnson over Barron.
I wouldn't be shocked at all. I even said
right.
when I made the pick, I could easily go Will Johnson here. I just thought the local guy and the versatility Barron brings, I lean towards him. For
I think if the wide receivers in Genty are wiped out for them, I could see them going with an Omarion Hampton before they would pick. I think they want an offensive weapon. I think they want an offensive weapon at 12.
He was in consideration for me, and I thought Lance was going to have heart palpitations.
Although he was going to have heart
if I made that
palpitations.
pick after
Right.
picking Genty at 6.
You're 100%
I didn't
right.
want to kill Lance off.
You sure?
I'll say this. From what you guys just listed, Dallas is going to take one of those running backs in the second round.
100%.
Darn straight
They're not coming out of round 2 without a running back.
Oh, they're getting one of those guys.
And I would be shocked if both McMillan and Golden are off the board at 12. I think there's a chance both of them are still there at 12 when we get there, to be honest with you. So I think it'll be interesting. Like I said, folks, this draft board from picks like 20 to 60, the players are almost interchangeable in terms of how they are on a lot of these boards. So don't be surprised if we have a lot of surprises on the Thursday night and Friday night, quite frankly, of the NFL draft. Guys, this was fun. Always a good time.
Oh, yeah. All right.
So tomorrow, Paul and I will be doing LSU and Louisville prospects.
Yep.
Paul did a good job booking those guys. So we'll have a little Tyler Shook talk, little Ashton Gillott talk, and then we're going to have all the guys out of LSU, a couple offensive tackles from there we can talk about.
And the guard.
And the tight ends, Mason Taylor. Yeah, and Braden Swinson, the edge rusher. Very good.
Yeah.
All those guys, absolutely. So that'll be tomorrow. And then on Friday, the office is closed for spring break / Good Friday. We are going to pre-record a show tomorrow with Matt Waldman, who comes on every year with us. I just sent you his book.
I got it.
It is about 200 pages of just offensive players in the draft. So if you guys want a playmaker in the draft, listen. And he does quarterbacks too. Listen to the show on Friday. Matt will go through it with Paul and I. And maybe we'll do a combo show, Paul. I'm tempted of getting our buddy Kentley Platt on tomorrow too to talk about the RAS scores.
Yes.
So maybe we can do those, put those two together and
That'd be a
make
good
it
idea.
a BBK on Friday. So I'm going to reach out to Kent, see if he can do it. We'll combine those into
Those are
one
always
BBK for
fun.
Friday to kind of give an overview of the draft class in terms of how you look at it. So stay tuned for that. Giant Huddle's coming out. We have draft season, should be posting shortly if it's not up there already. End of the week, we're going to have, let's see, Nate Tice just went up yesterday, so that's up there. We have Brian Broaddus, former NFL scout, coming up Thursday. And then
Another good guy.
I should be recording with Chris Sims tomorrow morning. That'll be going up on Friday for Friday's Huddle. So I already have Thomas Dimitroff in the can. That's going up Friday. That's going on Monday, I should say, before the draft next week. So a lot of your stuff coming your way in the John Huddle podcast. Make sure you check it out, along with the archive of Big Blue Kickoff Live and Draft Season. Just search for it in your favorite podcast platform, Giants.com/podcast, or go to the Giants mobile app and find it there. Thanks for joining us on Big Blue Kickoff Live, presented by Cadillac, the official luxury vehicle from the Giants. We will depart the Hackensack Meridian Health Podcast Studio. Keep getting better, eat some lunch, and we'll be back in here with you tomorrow. Until then.